particularly small nonprofits, they don't know where to go to find the funding, right? They're really living outside that bubble of where the funding lives. I'm hearing a lot of people really wanting to think outside the box of what fundraising can look like. I keep saying to folks, you got to start building community. You got to start, bringing all of those diverse people involved. I think nonprofit's going to have to get a little bit more nimble. Is there another nonprofit that's killing that program and we're doing great over here? Why couldn't we come together and do something special? Don't make it more difficult by having it be a solo mission. I think the sky's the limit on nonprofit, and I just want everyone else to believe that to be true as well.
I think people are chasing headlines is what I said yesterday. And I'm not trying to say that to demean anyone for paying attention to what's going on. Like that's not my point at all. But I'm not afraid to say it, to push folks to focus and really, really focus and double down on what they need to do right now with uncertainty and the headlines and whatnot. So you said you just started a podcast with a friend a few weeks ago. Give me an idea of what was an uncomfortable topic, if you don't mind. Let's just start there.
Yeah. So we had, I don't know if you follow her, Brianna Quinn. She's LinkedIn, and she very much in public talked about her job hunt in this sector and how, she didn't call out names. She didn't say who she was interviewing with, but man, she narrowed in on here's some bullshit in this job description. And she did a really good job. So we had her on to talk about what it was like applying for jobs. And then she actually got a job, discovered in 6 months it was not the right job at all. And then very publicly shared again her journey of going, this is what happens in this sector sometimes, that, the listing for the job and what the actual job is. And so we talked about nonprofit workplace culture, which is often so far down people's priority lists, and it shouldn't be, because it's affecting our impact. And so we talked about that, which I think a lot of folks, when we talk about impact, we are often looking at fundraising, marketing, operations, how do those all play in? But we're not talking about nonprofit teams and how the lack of cohesion in teams is also affecting our impact. So that was a really fun conversation.
I had a conversation with someone about culture and about retention and about burnout. And what's so funny is we had a guest come on and she brought it up to me, and I went, oh my goodness. I know notoriously folks in the space are overworked and underpaid and would bleed for their mission and all of these things, and the organizations that they get the opportunity to work with. But I didn't know that was such a thing. And I'm not saying that because I was being obtuse. It just hadn't really been brought to my attention. And the minute, of course, as it works that way, right? What do they call it? Murphy's Law or something? It's the minute someone said it, it was just it was on blast all the time. I was hearing it in megaphones about how this was happening, or this lack of understanding and working on those things. What is it about our space? We run a for-profit company. I'm assuming your Nonprofit Hive is a for-profit company.
Yeah, we're technically a for-profit. We're technically a for-profit, which then brings a whole thing about I didn't want to have a board, and that's why.
Totally right. No, exactly. But it's I think it's such a noble enterprise to start a company, right? And it's very difficult. It's supposed to be difficult. What's interesting about our space, and when I say our space, the nonprofit space, social impact space, whatever moniker you want to use to describe it, what is it about just the because there's no lack of talent, right? There's no lack of quote unquote impact when the stars align, right? We say things like, well, we think that the organizations that we work with are the safety net of society. I've said things like, I know this organization is doing God's work because I've seen it. And it doesn't matter if you want to, get dogmatic about it or what have you. I just really can see it and you can feel it, and it's visceral and it's real. And there's these beautiful communities like the one that you're building and whatnot, where I'm very, very intrigued with the community side of things. But what is it about the lack of maturity in our space that won't act like a sound for-profit, quote unquote, company with strong culture and strong retention and the things that matter with people? And the whole thing is a people exercise at the end of the day. It's an exercise in people and surrounding yourself with the right people and engaging. Why won't nonprofit, I'm asking you 6 questions at one time, but why won't nonprofit professionals treat donors and stakeholders like like partners and pick up the phone and think, like, what is it? Like, that's a huge loaded question, but what is it about the space that just hasn't caught up with the time, so to speak? Where I'm just, I want that for everyone. It's just very interesting that it hasn't yet.
Well, and like you said, you just like, those are like 6 huge questions.
Totally,
I mean,
right.
It could be a podcast on its own. But I do think, nonprofits, there's a real way they look at themselves, and that's part of the problem, for sure.
Well, give me an example.
They don't look at themselves as creative folks. Like I find most nonprofit professionals are actually being very creative in how they're doing outreach, how they're working with like a third of the tech tools that any for-profit of the same size would go, well, of course we're going to invest in Google Ads. Of course we're going to invest in this new AI tool. It's going to do all these things.
Totally.
They're behind the times on that for sometimes very good reasons, and boards stop up a lot of things, which that's another conversation. But they don't look at themselves as creatives, as innovators. It's not a moniker that nonprofit grabs onto and goes, oh, we're innovators, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that someone in startup, like I'm currently running a startup.
Yeah.
I have to accept those labels as part of it. Otherwise I will fail. And nonprofits don't accept those labels. And so sometimes that leads to failure, right? Like they look at themselves with their own crappy lens, like their people aren't worth paying the same amount as somebody who worked in for-profit doing the same job. And, we don't deserve these tools. And, and some of that is talking about impact. Some of that is connecting with donors and stakeholders in the right way, which you noted. I don't think a lot of nonprofits are really good at creating that community and cohesion feel that actually a lot of stakeholders I'm seeing, especially younger donors, we're talking about the next generation of donors. If you can't figure out how to bring them into a sense of community, you've got a big problem.
You lost.
Because they're not going to stick around, right? Like they want that feeling. Whether you're conveying it through social media or whether you're conveying it through email, and likely you probably need to use every channel you have under the sun to convey that feeling to them.
Yeah.
But they want something more. So, it's so many different pieces, the power dynamics, again, of how by not bringing stakeholders and donors into community, we're actually creating more uncomfortable power dynamics because they can't necessarily see how hard it is on the ground. They're not witnessing what the work really truly looks like for fear that we're going to lose funding. And I actually wonder, if we were honest about the work, would we actually gain more sympathy and more funding for how hard this is?
I 1,000,000% agree with that, because, I've seen donors, regardless of the demo or generation that they fall in, right?
Yeah.
If someone makes an investment, if someone's a stakeholder in your organization, I once again had this conversation yesterday. If you communicate with them and have that audience with them, have that relationship built with them, because then they were just, we're building, that's what we do in fundraising. We're building relationships. That's life. It should be treated the same way. If we've built that relationship, well, before shit hits the fan, we should be calling those stakeholders. Because they not only want to know, actually, is what I found, they deserve to know. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, yes, it's the fear. I just think it's this fear and trepidation of like, yes, like you said, like losing funding, because fundraising is hard. I'm gonna follow up on that question at some point in our conversation. But it's like, I don't understand. Like, it just needs, once again, I think we just need to shine a light like we're doing right now on this. And I was very excited to have this conversation, because I know that I'm not saying your sole focus, but a primary focus of what you've done is you're building a community for nonprofit professionals, it seems like, right?
Yep.
But you're also, I have to say, without putting words in your mouth and telling you what your mission statement is or whatnot, or your vision, is also you're shining a very large light on the fact that you do need to build this community of your stakeholders, volunteers, boards, committees, other nonprofits down the street that you can collaborate with. That doesn't have, I just think that's such a massive, massive piece of this puzzle of success, where it has to be community focused. And so like I said, I was very excited to have this conversation, because we're constantly nudging organizations to do just that. What made you want to? You sound like an entrepreneur, right? Creative. Yeah.
I would say I am like the most accidental entrepreneur ever. And
which happens. Which
happens. And very much I went out looking for the Nonprofit Hive, not knowing that, I was like, I just want community. I want to join somewhere. I want to send people that I'm supporting and know who are also desperate for community. Like, where are we going? Where am I sending all of us to? Right. Like, I just wanted the Nonprofit Hive to already exist because, my husband did a startup when we had little kids, and it was so hard. And I knew how hard it was. And I was very much the person who was like, never am I ever going to be involved in a startup in any of my days after that experience. And, couldn't find what I was looking for, sat on it, thought about it, was like, oh no, I'm going to do this. I guess very reluctantly, even, tried to I'm pretty cautious as people go. And I was like, okay, we're going to do a wait list first. Let's see if people even think they like this idea. And so that was summer 2023, threw up a wait list on LinkedIn. That's it.
Yeah.
Talked about it a bit. Hey, I think we're going to do this cool thing.
Yeah.
And by September, we had 200 people on the wait list from all over the US and Canada. And so I was like, okay, I guess we build the most basic MVP you've ever seen and see what happens. And that was October 2023. So we're just coming up on 18 months since we launched the actual Nonprofit Hive community. We're still doing our basic premise around one-to-one conversations weekly, connect with people in your community. And so we facilitate that through introductions, video, all of that. We handle all those pieces. And since then, we're getting very close to 10,000 facilitated conversations. And it just went immediately, you'd appreciate this, went immediately international, not part of my plan at all. I was like, oh yeah, we just have to do 3 time zones across Canada and the US. It'll be totally fine. Right. And instead, I think it was week 2, we had someone sign up and start participating from Uganda. And I was going, oh no, our time zones, how do we handle time zones? How do we handle calendar invites? How about daylight savings? What a nightmare. All of those pieces very quickly came into being. And it has honestly just been the most incredible experience to lean into community and discover what happens when you just put 2 people in a room and see what they decide to create together. And sometimes all it is just a nice conversation about nonprofit. And that's it. And you feel seen for 30 minutes by another person who knows this work and gets this work. Yeah. But on the higher level, friendships form. People from other countries have gone and met each other on purpose since we started. And isn't that so special, right? So man. Incredible.
You built something really cool. Yeah. Awesome. No, well, what I was going to say as well is you sound like an entrepreneur, and I mean that with all due respect. But I think there's a few things that come along with it. A, it's a sickness, so best of luck with treating that. Oh no! This is coming from one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my partner Jason and I, we started the company together and everything, and it's we say it's an affliction, and our wives they kind of get it, but they kind of don't. Oh, but no. It's so cool when you come across something like that where your curiosity gets piqued, which is another definite skill sets and prerequisite for being an entrepreneur. The curiosity's there, but just identifying a need. And when you can stumble, I still wake up every day. I mean this literally. It's shit. I had a conversation. I was, all honesty, I was 2 minutes late for our meeting because I was on a call with a team member because we're going to a conference in May, and we are so jazzed about it because
awesome.
Yeah, we just haven't been, and the welcoming has already been so warm. I'm like, I just know in my gut from going to some good ones and going to some bad ones, this is going to be a great one. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
And I wake up every day with that same vigor. It's not always easy. I know you know that, but it's just really, really cool when you were able, the fact that you were able to identify a need. And the market, listen, the scoreboard's the scoreboard. The market is telling you something, all these different ways that you can identify that you're onto something. And then from there, I always say it's we don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes, right?
Absolutely.
And in the best possible ways. I'm so grateful that you found that for you and the 10,000 folks that are involved, and it's really beautiful because there is a need for that connectivity, because there's so many folks in our space that feel like, I'm assuming, without putting feelings in their mouths, so to speak, or thoughts, they feel like they're on an island. And they need that, and they need the training, and they need some thoughtfulness, and they need some time, and things, the greatest gift that you can give anyone, things like that. But I'm just happy you started it, and I think it's really, really cool. How big is your team? Talk to me about, like what's going on there, just like from a nuts and bolts perspective.
Oh
like
gosh,
the mechanics.
Well, very small.
That's okay.
Very, very small. Yeah. I will say one of the fringe benefits to entrepreneurship is if you are already a marketer, that's a big battle, right? Of getting traction and getting out there. So luckily my background is marketing. So that's been really beneficial. I now have like a junior marketer on my team part-time. Okay. I'm an operations and partnerships person part-time, because our community is completely free for users. And we actually have a sponsorship model based on other mission-driven organizations sponsor our chats weekly. So that's how we've been able to keep doing what we're doing. And then I have a developer, because now, of course, we have some people who joined at the very, very beginning, and they've done over 50 conversations, right? Like they're the power users, these people who are like just also super connectors and are excited to constantly connect. How do we now build something additionally special for those individuals who, the big thing people keep saying is we'd really love small group conversations where we could facilitate and go, hey, this week we'd really like to talk about peer-to-peer fundraising in a small group. Yeah. Well, we could do that. So we're figuring out that next iteration of how do we build more community into the technology that we built, and how do we bring more conversations, more meaningful moments to this greater Nonprofit Hive community. And the community's dictating those things to us, right? Like we're constantly like listening in. I take 3 chats on Thursdays, which is our Hive chat day. Yeah. I take all 3 time slots, and who are the people who are joining this? Why did they join? What matters to them? And I just take that, have, some ambassadors who help also go into those conversations. And then I go, okay, what's the tidbits? What are people saying? Like, how do we keep growing and thriving and meeting the moment? Because man, nonprofit is going through a moment, 100% in the US, but it's everywhere, right? Yeah. Like there's really this shift happening that we need to acknowledge and figure out as a community, how are we going to meet this moment? Not as individuals and not as organizations alone, because we can't affect the change we need to on that level, for sure.
Strength in numbers is what I kind of hear you say with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Talk to me about that. About just, what you're hearing. I mean, I'll use a term like uncertainty, or just a lot of change. It just seems like there's a lot of change, not necessarily turmoil. I don't want to say that. I still think that there's plenty of funding out there. I have a lot of data to support that. Right. But talk to me about what you're hearing from folks and the challenges they're facing, so we can, bring that to light just on the episode and what have you, and just kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, on a community level, a lot of, particularly small nonprofits, they don't know where to go to find the funding, right? They're really living outside that bubble of where the funding lives, what's local, what's national, what's potentially international funding. So I think that's continues to be that search for grants, at least here in Canada. 70% of the funding to Canadian nonprofits still comes from government. So it's an enormous amount, right?
Okay.
So figuring out how to find those opportunities, but also like that's an insane number. And then, as some of us Canadians watch what's happening in the US, we're very much like, oh, this might not be the most sustainable model according to different changes in structures, so I think I'm hearing a lot of people really wanting to think outside the box of what fundraising can look like. And I keep saying to folks, you got to start building community. You got to start, bringing all of those diverse people involved, like not only your constituents, but also like your donors and like your friend, like they all need to know what's happening. Yeah. And so that's a big thing. I've seen a lot of nonprofits really want to start talking about the hard pieces of what this work looks like and what retention would really look like. Like you already had mentioned retention.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of people be like, because I think they feel alone. Like it feels like it maybe is only happening to your nonprofit, and 100%.
That's not the case.
It is not only happening at your nonprofit, like 100%.
Right.
Yeah. So that's been really cool. And I also think there is a real desire for like really practical applications of ideas, right?
Give me an example. Give me an example of that.
Yeah. Like, I mean, when we talk about even, like AI and fundraising and what that looks like, I think we're not looking, most nonprofit professionals, and for sure our community skews towards small to medium executive directors, founders, like they're often in the more senior positions, and they're wanting to connect with others because they're like, how the heck are you pulling this off? Like, what, how are you making magic happen here? But I think they do want practical applications for how to use AI, how to bring in new fundraising tools. But the overwhelm is so deep right now that it's really hard to know how do you bring on more when you already feel maxed out, right? So like I get a lot of that. The word overwhelm comes up a lot in this in our conversations, right? And I think it's cool for us. We get to reconnect them back to why often their mission is happening. They get to talk about their mission in a really deep way with someone else who gets it. But it's, the job is not getting any smaller. And absolutely, I think there was this idea in everyone's minds that, COVID was over. Things are going to get better in 2025. And instead, there's a little bit of grieving happening. I think there's a little bit of like collective nonprofit grief happening, and we need to figure out how to figure out those steps forward from that space.
83% of you watching this show right now have not hit the subscribe button to the Hey Nonprofits YouTube channel. Do us a favor, it'd mean the world to me and the Hey Nonprofits team. Just hit the subscribe button and you'll stay up to date with every new show, every new video that we pump out. We're going to keep pumping out shows with the greatest minds in fundraising. Please do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Now back to the episode. I'm hearing you loud and clear. I'm not saying that this is exactly how I feel, but just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Do you feel like from COVID, folks were hitting numbers, fundraising really well and using new opportunities and new ways? And I saw, we started, like I said, in 2016. So I've seen it for a bit, better part of a decade. Doesn't mean we have it all figured out, but just we're students and observers of what's going on. Just from having we work in events specifically. And we'll be in like 2,000 events, like community type fundraising events this year.
Nice.
So we get a lot of data and we see a lot, right? But I've noticed just from COVID and post COVID and an injection of talent and a little bit. I mean, that's almost like was it like the space was kind of like ripe for a correction. There's a little bloated, a little oversaturated in some areas. Like, kind of speak to that, like how you've seen it, because I know you started the company in 2023, but you've seen a lot, before then and now, right now being such an interesting time, such an important time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't think this work is necessarily for everyone, and that's totally okay. Right?
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
This is not for everyone. And I think, similar to what you said, there in certain areas of this sector, there was a whole bunch of organizations kind of serving the same constituents, often in the same city. That only increases our feelings of competition as everyone tries to run all of these sometimes very similar programs.
Yes.
And I do think I'm seeing a move of funders actually calling for collaborative efforts, which is exciting to see funders doing that. Like that's
very community driven. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
But there's also a fear among nonprofits to go, well, if we're both doing the same thing, what does that mean for my job? Right. And is AI coming for our jobs? Like that's even its own feeling. And, I think, nonprofit's not really that different than anywhere else in trying to find its leggings in what feels like a very new world in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Things are happening very fast. Yeah.
Very fast. And nonprofit has traditionally not moved.
Very slow.
Right? So, I think that's a lot, when new AI tools that are engineered at fundraising come out all the time. And I don't know if you have this experience. I often have tech companies reaching out going, hey, have you seen this that we can do now? Hey, have you seen this? Yeah. I mean,
it's a conversation every day for us. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's big. It's big. So I think nonprofit's going to have to get a little bit more nimble, but that requires space and time. And I think, nonprofits even going and really truly having a big talk with their boards and any major stakeholders they go, okay, so we're going to not try to make double what we made last year, because why would we have ever thought that was possible? And instead we're going to niche down, zone in, make collaborations, figure out what programs maybe shouldn't be running, because that's even a real question we should be asking ourselves. Yeah. And instead go, is there another nonprofit that's killing that program and we're doing great over here? Why couldn't we come together and do something special? I don't think it will actually result in a loss of position, because the needs have never been higher, but the funding is more complicated. So how do we come together, right? As a sector and as nonprofits? I think there's so much opportunity here.
You're onto something. I've never heard anyone with that M&A take on the space. And I think that's so huge because we have the conversation with organizations all the time. It's like, hey, listen, you don't own your donors. Yeah. They give to you, they give to the, organization down the street. And, we've constantly been pushing, when we have the opportunity, the collaborative piece, the community piece, have an in-person event, invite people, talk to people about what you do. I don't know what to say thank you. Let's just start there, that, right? Like, but there's no reason why. Yeah, like you said, like there can't be some symmetry between the charity XYZ down the street, your shop, and then bringing your skills together, because synergy dictates that 1 + 1 can equal 5 or more at times if it's right, but just getting the minds in the room and not being afraid to have that conversation, I think is just so huge. I haven't heard anyone put it the way you just put it. I think it's really, really good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Well, and I keep joking that I'm like just collecting personal nonprofit stories and then just seeing what happens. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And, but one of the coolest things that's come out of this Nonprofit Hive community, we had a founder in Uganda, a founder in England, and a founder in Ghana, Africa. Yeah. They all serve children. All of their nonprofits serve children, but one's kind of got like a foundation out of the UK, and she was looking for kids to sponsor in rural communities. Yeah. And so the three of them, connected all over different Hive chats over time, come together and decide to start running this program to sponsor certain kids in each of the other nonprofits communities. And, they could be looking at it and going, oh my goodness, international donors, and like we're in competition. Yeah. No, you're not. You don't have to be in competition. And I think one of the biggest fallacies we're telling ourselves in nonprofit is that donors don't give to more than one organization, because
absolutely not. It's so uncommon. It's not even funny. Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think if someone cares about your nonprofit and you're doing a stellar job of communicating your mission and making them feel involved, if anything, there's so I think the sky's the limit on nonprofit, and I just want everyone else to believe that to be true as well.
We have competitors in our space, and I'm friends with some of the folks that run the other shops and what have you. And I believe in differentiation over competition 10 out of 10 times. That's just my take on just business in general, and it's served us really, really well. I actually speak to nonprofits about it all the time. Be different. Do they not pick up the phone? Okay, you pick up the phone. That's different. People will remember that. It's stronger than competition if you're really in that mindset of competing with the charity down the street or the nonprofit down the street. And we created a saying. It's just like, more good people in the space is good for the space.
Absolutely.
And it's really okay. And it's interesting. Like we were talking about that maturity piece at the beginning of the episode, where it's just like, it's really okay to give that organization their flowers, to call them and be like, hey, it looks like you have a playbook. Would you mind sharing a few pages of it with me? You know what I mean? Like, that's really okay. Like, it's not, you're not, what's the other term? Like, you're not taking rice out of the bowl of the other person's family. You know what I mean? By doing that or losing yours. It's such an interesting, human thing that we just have to get over as a space in general. But I think sharing those stories is how we do it, right?
Well, and in many ways, that's why when we decided to start the Nonprofit Hive, we started it at this really like grassroots individual level, because I know at an organizational level, competition increases, right? But like the whole point has been, we also tend not to put people from the same city in the same conversation, because similarly,
but they get different perspective though. That's good.
It changes things, right? So like,
no, it's good.
Someone at like I use this example quite a bit, but somebody at an SPCA on the West Coast and an SPCA on the East Coast, those two humans that both work in like a very specific niche like that, they have so much to talk about with each other. They cannot, like the reviews we get after those calls, I think I've got like 700 testimonials. I don't even know what to do with them all. It has been very much like, oh my goodness, I met me, but they're here and they're able to go, what worked? What's not working? Yeah. Like we're having the same problem without feeling like they're going to collide into some sort of conflict of interest for both of them. Right. And so if that's where we have to start as a sector is in the arms of strangers to start, and then we can move it outwards into our collective communities. All right, let's start here and like, let's see what happens after that.
Yeah. Like I use the playbook thing or like the roadmap. It's like, there's a roadmap for these things. And there are people that you've mentioned, there are people that are absolutely hitting it out of the park during an uncertain time or just a strange time or a time that we haven't seen before. People are crushing it right now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I got to be honest with you, a lot of the folks that are doing that actually want to share that story. They don't want to like hoard everything just for themselves. They're really okay with sharing that story. You just have to find the people, right? And obviously, your platform is such a beautiful piece of that, of finding those stories. I wanted to ask you a question about people that just generally go, I'm all in. I want to build this community. I want to collaborate with more donors and volunteers and just people in my community, for instance. But I understand the importance because I've seen this, organization that builds trails, down the street. They do such a great job and people come out and they all party together and they have a great time. What do I do? Like when they go, Tasha, what do I do to build this community? What would be my first steps if I've never had like an in-person event or, I've only been in business for 3 years. There's 3 of us, in the, at the office. Like, what do I do to build that? Like, what would be my first steps?
Oh my goodness. First steps. I think you need to find opportunities to just listen. So if you're listening, if like I know surveys, so many people don't want to play with surveys, right? Like your donor audience is like,
but it's data. It's data.
But that's okay, right? Yeah. Like it's a way to start and some people will participate. Yeah. I always like to identify in my community who those champions are, right? So like if you already have a champion, someone who consistently donates year after year, like I would reach out to those people first. Like, do you have somebody on social media who you see them share everything you do but you've never talked to them? Why have you never talked to them? Like reach out to them. Like, why are you engaging with everything we do? Why do you like it so much? Because they may not even be a donor, but they clearly feel something deeply about your messaging. Yeah. And so I think it's totally possible to just kind of go champion and have conversations with those people, because if you kind of go, hey, would you like to do something in person? Would you support us? Would you come out to this? Like, would you be interested in being a volunteer or just would you show up? Would you share? Them being even asked what their opinion is, such a cool place to start, right? And maybe they'd very much go, oh man, given the time of year and all of these things, this would be a great time. Or, oh, I actually even know a location that we might be able to help you get for free. Or like you just start and it's incredible what your people will give back to you. Yeah. And you just ask to have a conversation.
Good call. Yeah. People that are that outgoing and that positive in a world where it can be a little bit negative sometimes, like with comments and this and that and the other thing. And I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, to be honest with you, but nonetheless, I know it exists. Yeah. But people that are that outgoing, they care. That's obvious. And I just said they're outgoing. So if you ask them their opinion, I got to be honest, they're probably going to be pretty flattered. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to call it ego, but you can't really underestimate that there's probably a little bit of ego there. Like, oh my gosh, they asked me, like, I've got all this, like, I have all these ideas and I just can't wait to, pour it into an organization. And like, you know what I mean? Those kinds of things. I think it's just so obvious to me that folks wouldn't just pick up the phone or make that ask or make that invitation, right? Which we reverse engineered it. We're like, we're not creating our own language. We're kind of trying to, I guess, right? But it's like, people are like, I'm so afraid to ask for money. It's like, well, don't ask for money. Invite someone.
Yeah.
Or a cup of coffee. Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Like, listen.
That reframe to an invitation versus an ask is so critical, right? Like,
I love that you said listen. You know what I mean? I love that you reframed it as, let's just make it a listening exercise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not hard to put to put a conversation on the books. You know what I mean? On the calendar. You know what I mean? Like, I just love that. I love that you framed it that way. But yeah, it's just folks are always going, oh, I'm so afraid to ask. And I'm just, well, why? They like you. This isn't high school. This isn't high school.
You know line yourself up with a sure win. Like, line yourself up with your champions. Like, line yourself up with your champions. The person who always reshares, like, I use that as a social media. Someone who always reshares everything you do and really seems to like love what you're up to.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably going to be a great conversation. You're going to walk away from it feeling good. Like sometimes, like, pump yourself up. Oh my goodness, we're amazing. Look at what this person has to say about us. Like, they love us.
Yeah.
Then start moving outwards, right? Like, it's okay to line yourself up with an easy win to start. And if the end result is, and it probably would not be this end result, but like, it is market research to go, oh my goodness, the majority of our members are really not up for something in person at the time of year. We thought we need to rejig our thinking on this, right? Yeah. That's super valuable information to have, because I think so often, instead we're looking internally at what would be convenient for our nonprofit. A board member goes, oh, hey, we should really do something on this date and we're going to have a gala. What if your community is like, I don't want to go to a gala. Like, they're just not interested in that. They really want a like deep grassroots community event. They would really love to like have a walk and talk. I have no idea. Like, it could be whatever, right?
Totally.
But if you're not,
you won't know unless you find out, though. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you like you said, unless you do that market research, you have your marketeer hat on.
You just got to do it. And it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. You can make it simple. But I think that's usually when I people ask about, community and how to dive more into community. I think you need to know what your community even wants before you I see so many people stand up a Slack channel. Does anybody in your community want a Slack channel? Is that what they said they wanted? Because it can be a great place to waste a ton of your time and energy. And maybe everyone's super happy to just get email updates once a week instead. And like you've gone down a path that no one's following you. And so I think it's worth investigation, I guess. It's worth listening. It's worth making those asks and doing the inviting.
I love your language and meeting folks like you on the pod and stuff has been awesome, because you called it champions and we call it raving fans, but I like champion more. These are your champions of your organization. I love, because I'm big on branding, right? Like I'm once again, like you said, we're listening. You said the same thing. I get all the, all this feedback and these testimonials. So we're just like arbiters of all this information. I used to we're information thieves. We're just pulling it from everywhere and sharing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, I've heard some amazing stories about like monthly recurring programs that were rebranded and not in the name of the organization, and that were just tremendously successful. I just love, it's like, hey, these are our champions. We're going to have a champions dinner. Right? I just love that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And it's so simple, and one of your champions knows a restaurant or a wine bar or you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, or event. It's just so simple. And that's not too far outside the box, if you ask me. Right.
Yes.
But starting there and framing it that way, I think is really, really crucial. I think it's huge. Yeah. It's good. Really good stuff. Yeah. Thanks. I love that. I want to ask, like, what's going on? What do you all have in the works? What's next with the Nonprofit Hive? Like, what's the next big event, stuff like that. Before I get to that, and I want folks to reach out to you and show you some support on LinkedIn, all that stuff, which is where we found you. And y'all are very prolific there. So I appreciate that for the community and for everyone involved. I ask our guests a question every time that we have an episode. So every episode, I go, fundraising is hard. And we kind of just all agree. And it doesn't have to be like insurmountable, but you know what I mean? It is hard. Otherwise, everyone would be amazing at it. And it's supposed to be hard, kind of like running a business. Right? Fundraising is hard, Tasha. Don't make it more difficult by doing what?
Don't make it more difficult by having it be a solo mission. Like, doesn't have to be a solo mission. It doesn't have to be. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Give me an example, like, asking someone close to you. You're just talking about like someone that likes all your posts. It's like, you could just DM them and go, hey, thanks so much. Like, I'd like to know what occurs to you to like all of our posts. Like, we just noticed this. Thank you. Can you want to meet for a cup of coffee? Like, is that what you're just like something that simple? Yeah.
I think it's that. I think, we watch nonprofits invest so heavily in social media, but without a plan for actual engagement, right? So, those are two different, there's engagement is its own beast. And it is almost like engagement and community are very closely tied together. And they're like the apex of when great fundraising and marketing happen, you get engagement, right? Yeah. And that's where like everyone wants something viral. Well, what are you going to do with the virality? Like, what's your plan? Because if you have nowhere to aim that, like, what's the goal, right? And so I frequently think that we should be highlighting our own teams more, the people behind the work. You want your staff to be proud that they work for the organization they work for. Like, throw them into the social media, pump them up, give them a reason to share what you're doing as well.
Humanize it. Yeah,
exactly. And highlight those champions, highlight someone who helped, who's your like volunteers who are just crushing it. Give it a reason for them to like pump up and extend your mission. I think that is interesting as it is to showcase impact and the people we're supporting. I do believe people give to people. And so, as important as the mission is, oftentimes, they're giving for a reason. And really, this is why everyone wants a great fundraiser to bring their portfolio with them, because we are really attached to the people sometimes who make those asks and do the inviting. So, you got to extend that out further. I think peer-to-peer fundraising has huge potential, and the majority of the sector is doing it very poorly. Don't know how to leverage peer-to-peer the way that it could be done. So, I love fundraising. I love fundraising conversations just because there's so much to it. It's fascinating. There's a ton of psychology behind it you can get into too. It's fun.
There is a lot of nuance. I love that you said that. And, people do, one of the greatest fundraisers that I've ever met, Michelle Benson.
I love Michelle.
Isn't she sweet? Yeah, she's the best. She's the best. And she's a friend of HGA. And she said she calls donations business in the door because she comes from the for-profit side. Yeah. Right. And she's got plenty of experience and what have you. And people, and so I like to say is people do business with people they like.
It's just true.
And you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just like, why don't we call it business in the door? Why don't we like, have more of a, why isn't there more salesmanship involved? And just like, like your, peer-to-peer folks that have gotten involved are we could call those your prospect list.
Yeah.
Or folk, you know what I mean? Like that's your best prospect list. Get on the phone and engage with them. Like stuff like that. I just like just the reframing of all these things I'm fascinated. Like you said, there's a psychology. I love what you said about having a plan. What do you do when you have that, when you hit that virality? I just think it's just such good food for thought. So cool.
Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing. Yeah. That was the fastest answer to that question that we've ever had. So thank you.
Oh, really? I already kind of like, I have creeped some of your other stuff. So I kind of had already been thinking about it, but
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Well, hey, let folks know a couple things. Like what do you got in the works? Like what's fun and exciting? You shared some amazing examples of what you're doing right now with the community and what they're building with themselves, with your help, of course, propping them up. But yeah, what's going on like in the next 90 days, 6 months, what have you? And then of course, please let folks know where to find you, the easiest way to and engage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will be in person, which is wild because I don't leave my house too often at AFP Icon in end of April.
So I'm going in Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay,
in
cool.
Seattle.
Nice.
Super excited to do that. I'll be at the Build Good Summit in May in Toronto. So super excited to also go there, meet up with some of my community. And just, I love being immersed in all the conversations about nonprofit. Yeah. In terms of where the Nonprofit Hive is headed, we're super excited to be working on small group conversations for our members, starting to work into that space. We are just hit 73 countries represented as members, which is wild. So you know, cool. Just so cool, right? Like, yeah,
it is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's kind of wild is we've already had a couple members who got in touch over the last month or two, basically go, you know, what's the tech you're using behind this? So we actually have some of our members spinning up their own community hives for their membership in the nonprofit sector. So cool. Yeah, that was awesome. Kind of like, I don't know, as you said, entrepreneurship, all of a sudden, you're like, wait, is this a thing now?
It's awesome.
So we are, you know, like my dream is if the Nonprofit Hive is the first entry into more nonprofit spaces for you, that you're going to find other groups that you're like, oh, wait, do we work with the African diaspora? Oh, well, the USAFI group is very focused on just that. So come and meet more of your people. And so it's cool to see these additional communities spinning up out of this wild idea of one-to-one conversations.
I love that. Well, you created the platform. You gave, I like to say these kinds of things give folks permission, like, sure, you know, for lack of a better explanation, to like take the plunge
absolutely
on themselves, right? And their organization. And because you broke down those barriers, right? So good on you. I mean that. And it's really awesome that you created such a cool movement in such a short amount of time. So yeah, hats off to you. That's really, really cool. Yeah. It's awesome. Why we don't get to talk to folks that have stood up something like you in your organization. I think that's really, really cool. And obviously the market's telling you something, coming full circle, that it was necessary. So good on you for finding it. Yeah, it's awesome.
We need community now, probably more than we ever have before. It's time to go back to what nonprofit was, which nonprofit has been always about community. It was always about community. And, you know, it's time to just hone back in on that.
Bringing people together. Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it. Because I think there are just some things that grab people's attention. And I keep hearing you say things about building and this investment in people and your supporters and your champions. It just sounds like, I hate to, like it's cliche, but it sounds like the long game. It's going to require patience, and it's going to require trust and giving yourself permission and asking help for others and all these different things that feel uncomfortable at first glance. But it is the ultimate long game personified. And that's exactly what it's going to take if there's sustainability. So like I said, good on you. I think it's awesome. You. It's been nice sharing some time with you. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And I know folks will get a lot of value out of the episode. So thanks so much, Tasha. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. This was so fun. And, talk community and nonprofit all day. So thank you for having me.
Right on. Oh, here's your invitation also to come back. We'll circle back because it seems like you're learning stuff at light speed. So we'll have to have you come back here before the end of the year, and we'll share more about what you're learning. That'd be great. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks,
Tasha. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.